Good morning. Today is September 3rd, 2025. It's a beautiful morning here in Thailand. Today is actually a special day because today marks 5 years, the 5-year anniversary of me marrying my beautiful wife. And for anyone capable of subtracting 5 from the year 2025, it takes us back to 2020. It was indeed a COVID wedding. We had a great year in the year 2019. We traveled all over the place. We started the year in the UK, having spent Christmas and New Year there in 2018. We did a lot of traveling in Japan. We visited Mount Fuji, we visited Kyoto, Osaka. Later on in the year, we went to the Philippines. That is where we got engaged. That's where I got down on one knee and popped the question. And then we finished off the year by visiting my friends back in Korea and spent Christmas and New Year in Hong Kong. It was one of those years that will always stand out to me as peak. So when we did get engaged, we had already decided we were going to move to Thailand. And I guess the plan was to have sort of a smaller but beautiful ceremony. I wasn't going to invite 500 people over. A couple of friends who were planning on coming and some family who were planning on coming, but we just wanted to have a nice ceremony. And then 2020 happened and it really threw a spanner in the works, not necessarily because of the wedding itself, but because of the visa situation. You see, what we always planned to do was move to Thailand, legally marry and start the visa process for me to be here. And then we were going to have a ceremony, I don't know, 3 to 6 months later. We obviously had to make a choice. Actually, it was kind of forced. We didn't have much choice at all, to be honest, but we had to push through with the legal marriage because obviously the whole world was shut down. I didn't know what was going on. That was a very scary year. We've been living together in Japan for nearly 4 years at that point, and the thought of me having to bounce out back to the UK without a clear path of when we would be able to see each other again. But the UK government were not exactly helpful at that time. Obviously, I get it. They were kind of favouring people who were in desperate situations, but they weren't willing to provide the correct documentation that we needed. Eventually, after a short wait, it did become available. And then to get to the point, we did the legal requirements 5 years ago today. Now, as you may or may not be aware, it doesn't stop there. It's not a case of simply getting married and then you are legally allowed to just come and go as you please in Thailand, as long as that marriage lasts, which, you know, in our case, will be forever. We haven't got any plans on getting divorced anytime soon, although I'm sure some of you will have some insight into my marriage that I don't have. I've noticed that is a trend whenever you talk about your wife on this platform. You have to renew that visa every single year, and I'll be honest, just my opinion, I don't want to say too much, it is a little draining. When I've lived in countries in the past, usually my visa has been connected to my work. Usually it's been very straightforward. There's been no real question marks. It's just a case of take a load of documents, get them stamped, and then you're in for another year, 3 years, 5 years. To have to do this every single year can be a little bit tiring. There is so much documentation involved, so many questions involved. Now I get it. Some people are probably trying to play the system. Some people, maybe they're getting married for certain reasons, certain conveniences. Maybe they're not in it truly for the sake of love like I am. I get why they ask you questions, but I just think for me, there's this other variable. She's about 70 centimeters tall. She's absolutely bloody gorgeous, the most adorable little thing in the world. When you're sat there with your wife, with your baby, just a completely normal family. We've got all the documents you've asked for. We've met all the financial requirements, etc., etc. It would be nice if people would emphasize with you, would see you're just a normal family who wants to be together. And sometimes it does happen, and sometimes it doesn't happen. So my first little piece of advice per se would be, I guess it really does depend on who you are dealing with on the day. But to be honest, even if you have prepared everything perfectly to a T, you have literally ticked every box, probably going to find something. They are probably going to find something. Even if it's not on the checklist that they've given you, there's probably going to be something extra that you are required to get, that you are required to produce as if from nowhere. And what I would suggest in that regard is there's no point in arguing about it. There's no point in really pushing back so much. Just do what they say. I think it's a little bit cliche, but I kind of live by the idea that we are guests here in Thailand and they are at liberty to move the goalposts if they choose to do so. So I simply have to try and keep kicking that ball into the goalposts wherever they end up landing. Another thing that causes a little bit of debate amongst the expat community is the 90-day check-in. Now, I've had this visa 3 or 4 times now in the time that I've been here. I did spend a year back in Japan, so obviously I didn't have a Thailand visa during that time. I had a 5-year visa. I could have stayed there for 5 years, but we only ended up staying 1. The 90-day check-in, the first couple of times that I was here, this online service never worked. But recently, it was working. The last 2 or 3 check-ins that I did, it was working. I always think to myself, I'm going to try this 3, 4, 5 times before I give up and end up going down to the office, probably wasting half a day there. I'm going to try it myself. And when it started to come through, I was like, bloody hell, that's a nice surprise. Bloody hell, it's windy. So if you have had trouble with it in the past, my friends, I would say just keep trying every time. Give it a go every single time. Give yourself plenty of time to try, to get rejected, to try again, to get rejected again, and then eventually it's up to you if you want to pop down there. The 90-day check-in at the office is never particularly stressful. As long as you've got the documents in hand, it's usually pretty straightforward, but sometimes you are stuck waiting outside for an hour or 2 in the heat. So it just really depends on how much of a moaner you are. Me personally, I'm a big moaner. I like to be in a nice place with nice sweet aircon blowing in my face, but sometimes that is not possible. Look at this beautiful view, guys. Look at that. Can you see the mountains over there in the distance? It's a really stunning place to live. Now, oh, look at that gorgeous bird going across. In the mountains at the end there, near that kind of industrial zone, there is actually a cliff point that you can walk out onto. You can actually walk right down to the cliff shore, which I think is bloody beautiful, but obviously with a 3-year-old baby, not practical. So I might head up there one day soon and drink it in, man. In conclusion, guys, this has not necessarily been intended to be a how to get your Thailand marriage visa, because I don't think there's any universal way to do it, to be honest. I think if you're applying for the first time, it is completely up in the air what you will be required to do. Of course, you can follow the checklist of your said office. Even so, there might be some spanners thrown into the works, so you just got to go with the flow. And I think going with the flow is the overarching piece of advice that I would give anybody just to get a marriage visa, not just to get any visa, but just to live here in Thailand, to function here in Thailand. Just go with the flow. It's a beautiful place to live. There are certain things that can sometimes surprise you. There are certain things that can sometimes raise their ugly head out of nowhere. For example, a little bit of an issue with banks a few months back. I was amongst the group of people affected. I could not access my own money. In those situations, what can you do other than do whatever you need to do to sort it out? So go with the flow. There's no point in getting wound up about stuff. If you hear stories like this, if you hear stories about visa requirements, about banking issues, etc., and it does sound simply unbearable, oh, it's unbearable, then maybe Thailand is not the place for you. Maybe visit here on holiday. Sometimes that's what I wish I was doing. I wish I was just here on a permanent holiday, but once you put some roots down, you have to deal with some extra stuff. In my opinion, it's worth it. Hope this one's been helpful, geezers. See you next time. Bye bye.